Welcome back to Professor Wordsworth, where we unearth the forgotten histories of the words we use every day. Today, we're going to examine a term that describes ruin, misfortune, and calamity, the word disaster. Instead, its story begins with a deep-seated belief in the heavens, a story of a time when people looked to the stars for answers and sometimes saw their doom written in the sky. The word disaster is, in fact, a linguistic fossil of an ancient belief in astrology. Its etymology is beautifully straightforward and wonderfully poetic. It comes from a combination of two parts, the Latin prefix dis and the Greek root aster. The prefix adestran is a negative one, meaning apart from, without, or bad. The root aster comes from the Greek word astron, which means star. Put them together, and disaster literally translates to bad star or ill-starred. This is no accident. It is the deliberate construction of a word designed to describe a specific kind of misfortune. For centuries, across numerous civilizations, it was a widely held belief that the movements and alignments of celestial bodies, the stars and planets, had a direct and powerful influence on human affairs. An individual's fate could be determined by the position of the stars at their birth. A nation's fortune could rise and fall with the shifting constellations. A disaster, in this context, was not a random act of misfortune. It was a calamitous event caused by an unfavorable or malevolent alignment of the stars. In Italian, it was disastro. In French, désastre. All of these terms captured the same core idea, a calamity that was a result of a star or planet being out of position or unpropitious to a person or an event. The Italian poet Dante Alighieri, for instance, used the word in his works, giving it a sense of cosmic misfortune. From Italy, the word crossed the Alps into France, where it was adopted in the 16th century as désastre, carrying its celestial meaning with it. The French, in turn, were responsible for introducing the word to the English language, where it first appeared in writing around the late 1500s. Early English usage of the word disaster was directly tied to its astrological roots. To illustrate this, we need look no further than the works of William Shakespeare, who was writing at a time when this belief was still very much a part of the cultural zeitgeist. In his famous tragedy, King Lear, a character speaks of how these late eclipses in the sun and moon portend no good to us. Love cools, friendship falls off, brothers divide, in cities, mutinies, in countries, discord, in palaces, treason, and the bond cracked twixt son and father. This is the excellent foppery of the world, that when we are sick in fortune, often the surfeits of our own behavior, we make guilty of our disasters. The sun, the moon, and stars. Here, Shakespeare's character uses the word to mean precisely what it was intended for, a misfortune attributed to celestial bodies. This example from one of the most celebrated writers in the English language shows just how prevalent and literal the word's meaning once was. However, as the centuries passed, the word's meaning began to shift. The rise of modern science, spearheaded by figures like Galileo, Kepler, and Newton, challenged and ultimately dismantled the foundations of astrology as a predictive science. The Enlightenment period placed an emphasis on reason, empirical observation, and a rejection of superstition. As humanity's understanding of the universe evolved, the belief that stars and planets were the direct cause of human calamities began to wane. The word disaster, however, remained. The focus of the word shifted entirely to its effect. It was no longer a calamity caused by a bad star, but simply a calamity. The word was secularized and its meaning generalized. It became a powerful descriptor for any sudden event that brings great damage, loss, or ruin. A devastating earthquake, a shipwreck, a widespread famine, All of these became disasters. The word was stripped of its supernatural context and was reassigned to the very earthly catastrophes we experience. Today, the word disaster is an all-encompassing term for any major unforeseen calamity. We talk about natural disasters like hurricanes and volcanic eruptions, financial disasters like stock market crashes, and personal disasters that upend our lives. The original meaning of a fate written in the stars is almost entirely forgotten by the average user of the word. We use it to describe everything from a minor social faux pas, the party was a total disaster, to a global tragedy. And yet, the ghost of its original meaning remains in its very structure. It is a word that carries the memory of a time when we saw ourselves as subjects of a celestial design, and every misfortune was a sign from the cosmos. So, the next time you hear or use the word disaster, take a moment to appreciate its incredible journey. It is a word that traveled across languages and centuries, outlived the belief system that gave it birth, and evolved to become a cornerstone of our modern vocabulary. It serves as a powerful reminder of how language is a living archive of human thought and culture, the echoes of our ancestors' fears, hopes, and beliefs. The story of disaster is the story of how we, as a species, moved from blaming the stars for our misfortunes to understanding and, hopefully, preventing them ourselves.